topic is one that a lot of fans asked about when I kind of went to them with some questions. Is about recruitment, player recruitment. I think it's a topic that is, every team does it differently. Each of you will have different experiences with it. So I guess for you, Gavin and Creon first of all, and then we'll move on to Teo from a player perspective. I guess when you're recruiting Americans, for example, and British guys, how do you sell this franchise to them, and what does that product look like to them coming in, and how do you try and sell it to them? Because as you've mentioned, there's a lot of guys who've come in early on in their career as rookies or second year players and have had fantastic careers. After they've left, they've developed a lot here. So how do you kind of sell this franchise to players? Is it you're coming here to win, or you're coming here to develop? What kind of motto do you kind of present to them?
I think that, like Gavin said in the beginning, one of the most important parts when we sat down and we spoke about stuff is we're going to run the club professionally. So that makes it a really easy sell, in the sense of, we like, look, you're going to get paid on time. Whatever we're supposed to pay you, you're going to get paid. And that's a number one thing for making a player feel comfortable. Our setup in our facilities are second to none. So that's a big selling point also. Like when you speak to the agents, sometimes you don't speak directly to the players, first speak to the agents, and I'll give them the virtual tour of sports park, send them the gym, send them all the stuff that we do. Where we had the houses located was also key because they had quick access to the gym. So that works. The big part that comes down to what people want to earn. But what I try and do is be honest from the word go. This is what we can do. So an agent sends, like now, Gavin will send me, if Gavin sends me on average 3 to 4 emails a day that have 20 players. And then what will happen is I will go straight back to the agent and say, our players are in this price range. Can you narrow that gap down? And so we get players that we know are going to be able to, fit into our budget, so to speak. Once that happens, I might have a wish list, and then we just start scratching off a lot of players, because players play the game and they don't play forever and they want to get some money. So I don't know if Gavin can add to that on it.
What are we talking about? Are we recruiting players? Recruiting players. I again don't really get involved really anymore, because they Creon does such a fantastic job. And I think when players arrive, if I ever have to, talk to players, with the same thing, we reiterate the same things about what we are about, what we do, how we can essentially help the player. The VBL is fortunately or unfortunately, depends how you view it, is a bit of a gateway league. It's generally a gateway into some big leagues in Europe, or sometimes a gateway out of the big leagues in Europe. So you can catch players at different times in their career. But what we have, though, I think is perhaps where we've got a bit of USP is, if you look at that roster we've talked about already, and some of those players, we've got a good pedigree of developing players. Sure. And we have a good reputation. We don't get players like Ryan and Matthew and Willie, Casey, Quincy, Tony keeping contact with us, with Creon, with Teo as a club, if we're doing things badly. Then these guys can sense it. We may not be the right place for them at that time because we can't afford them generally, or it's not right in terms of the offers. But that's what we do. We do things right is the most important thing, because I think it pays off in the long term. Because actually, you never know when you're going to catch these guys. Tom, you'll experience this. Well, maybe not experience this summer because of COVID. But one of my favourite times of the year is summer. I look over in a balcony and the players we have playing, not a Scorchers player, but training and playing together. I mean, it's literally some of the best British players around. And then you throw in Joel Freeland in the mix, who's not playing, but not officially playing, but he shoots around. Those guys, they're not just doing that because we're just a local place. They're doing that because it's a good environment, a great coach, good people, good facilities. And I think that I'm adamant that pays off in the long term. In the long term, these guys, and maybe it is, when they've had their career in Europe elsewhere, and they're looking to move back to the UK. That's when the likes of Andrew Lawrence and Matthew, Ashley Hamilton, and some of these guys may think, actually, Surrey was a good place. Creon's a good guy. There's a good facility. There's good people. that's where I want to be, you know. And I think that playing that long game is good with me. I think that's where we are.
I think that's a very good point, Gavin. They get comfortable with what we're doing, and so we get players sometimes, and it's backfired or worked to a certain point. But like getting people like Matthew or Ryan to sign, and it's short term because they're waiting for a bigger deal to come along, but they trust they trust the franchise, and they like what the franchise looks for. And I remember Gavin speaking about, because obviously I'm oblivious to what goes on social media or the different things that are going on. Coaches just totally stay away from that stuff. But he spoke about somebody had done an exercise, Gavin, remember, and about clubs that they had played for, and what they, you know, and I think Gavin had said we ranked pretty high in the people that had given feedback to it.
I think so. Someone did a survey. Taylor might be involved. I think they did a survey of British basketball players. I think in the BBL, and they anonymously asked players like what their thoughts are of some of the clubs they've been at and stuff. You know, and we ranked like pretty high in terms of experiences. You know, we may have ranked lower in terms of perhaps the, you know, where they competitively finish in the league, but in terms of the experience that player, you know, and experience is quite an important thing. I think experience is important. We ranked really high, you know, in terms of looking after the players, being, you know, getting what they were promised. You know?
Yeah, and I think that's the key thing that we've always done, and it makes it a lot easier for me as a coach, because whenever somebody has a problem, or if there's a deadline that's missed because they just missed payroll, we make things happen, you know. And that's what I'm saying, like the whole building working towards making the franchise tick in the right way, the job that, you know, Sade will do and so forth, makes a big difference to how we get these guys. But at the end of the day, I have to paint the picture as closely to what it is, because we don't want elements of surprise. We've seen things happen, you know. Going back to, once again, like Desmond Lee, who was with us for a little while, and you know, and you go out, they went out to stay in Woking, and I remember I lived in Deep Cut, and I was upstairs, and downstairs in the kitchen, my wife was cooking, and she had Casey Ross Miller, who ended up living with us because Desmond had left. I think we had Timothy Johnson. TJ was a great guy, and I think it might have been who was the other guy that we had brought? Who did we bring as the shooting guard?
Mike Anderson. Was it Mike?
Mike Anderson. I think it was Mike Anderson was there. So I'm upstairs, and then I just hear this like shouting and running and chairs moving, and I come running downstairs, and them three big men were outside in the garden because a little spider had come into the kitchen. So sometimes guys are city guys. They don't see creatures or things like that, and they don't want anything to do with it. And you know, and so when Desmond Lee was put in Woking, and it was like this dark place in the middle of nowhere, lovely house and everything, but there were a lot of spiders, there were a lot of bugs and so forth. I think that kind of like pushed him over the edge and stuff, and that's why he left. So painting the picture on what it is that you're coming into, what the environment is, how the people are going to treat you, how great the fans are. That's another big thing. It makes it a lot easier for us to sell. And as I said, one thing that we do guarantee them is, and Gavin's very big on this, is not just leaving as a better player, but leaving as a better person. So we do a lot of talking about what you're going to do after basketball. As young as you are, what are you going to do after basketball? And he challenges myself on that. He challenges Teo, Kalen, Henry. He's always talking about that. And so when people come here, they learn stuff about the franchise. Like Ryan Richards, like Ryan will be like, man, I like it. You know, even Matthew comes and starts talking about, oh, I like the way you guys focus on this and that, you know. So I think we're an easy sell right now because we do everything honestly, you know, and that to me is what a lot of players look for, as well as getting better.
And a couple of people asked for you, Teo, do you ever get involved in recruitment or putting in a good word with the British guys, or is that something you kind of stay away from?
Do I get involved in recruiting? How
Yeah,
much can I
let me
really
tell
get
you how
involved?
Before how Teo gets involved. I go, Michael Jordan. Teo goes, okay. I'm like, any more? No, you can hoop. Can you play with him, Teo? Yeah, I can play with him. That's Teo's input into stuff. So I do go to him and say,
it's
hey, this is the guy, and then
recruiting's hard, man. I gotta give credit to Creon because recruiting's hard because you don't know. It's off. Like I can make a highlight reel and I could be the best. My highlight reel, you think, why is this guy not in the NBA? Because it's just picking and choosing what you want coaches to see. But it's so much more for you to select a group of guys that need to take you through a journey, through an emotional journey, it's so much. It's much more than just picking a guy that can hoop. There's a lot of things, and you can't see that just from videotape. You can't see that. You can't get that from just one conversation. So Creon has come to me and mentioned guys before, and like he says, I'm just like, I leave it down to him because there's so many factors that come involved. The only time I might help out is if I already know the guy and I can go in and reassure them and tell them what the situation's like, or if the guy reaches out to, a lot of guys have reached out to me personally and said, oh yeah, what is it like, what's going on over there, and I can, like Creon says, you can only be honest with them, but fortunately enough, like we're fortunate enough to have, I think, one of the best facilities in the UK, hands down, because you can literally live in that facility and get everything done you need to get done. So that's a big pull in. You've got a great coach. Everybody knows that everything's above board, because it's, let's be honest, in basketball, in the world of basketball, not just in the UK, in the world of basketball, everything's not always above board. There might be some situations where you don't get paid, where your contract doesn't go all the way through, where you get injured and that's it, you don't see no money. And these are things that, because at the end of the day, you're talking to people that might have families, you're talking to people that might need to send money here, you're talking to people that might be trying to invest in their future. So these are real people and real situations. So for that to get misconstrued or for that to get lost somewhere, it can mean a lot to the individual. So it's one of our things that we go by, and being honest and showing people what we're about before they come, or just showing people in general what we're about so they know what we're about, and not really messing people around, because that's just not cool.
Yeah.